Come on. What is going on, guys? And welcome back to another Rosh Reviews, where today we are in an OKA. This is most likely something a lot of you guys will never have heard before. And if we can find fifth gear, there we go. This thing is pretty epic. It is an absolutely monstrous 4x4 off-road truck, essentially. These things are hand-built here in Western Australia, and they really do cater to kind of this niche market where if you need something that can handle 3 tons or more and do extremely well off-road, this is what you get. It really is. And the fact that this thing is nearly 30 years old, this particular one has almost 600,000 kilometers. Mate, we're still cruising. Straight 6, diesel Cummins, right under here. We got a 5-speed manual, and mate, this thing loves to cruise. Now, OKA was first introduced in 1986 as basically an idea from a couple of different mining executives that thought, we need something that can handle, 3 tons or more and be a great off-roader. And they all put their heads together and essentially came up with the OKA. Now, it wasn't until kind of the early 90s that they started pushing these vehicles out. And this particular one is a 1998 model. It is build number 228. And there's only something like less than 500 in existence in the entire world. And yeah, they are something of quite rarity. Now, initially when these OKAs were released, they did come out with a 4-cylinder Perkins diesel. And from what I'm told, they were a little bit gutless. Now, there were 9 hand-selected ones that did go out to the UAE. Of course, they love their big off-roaders. They love these things. And they had a V8 in them. So they used to have V8 OKAs like this over in the UAE, tearing up the sand dunes, and that is pretty epic. This particular one is one of the rarer ones with the straight 6 Cummins. So this does have quite a bit more oomph in it, and these might only put down about 230-ish horsepower, but the Newton meters range, you're well into them 800, 900 Newton meters range, and it is torquey, this thing. Now, let's talk about driving position here, because it is pretty epic. I have driven trucks before, and we sit high. You got a very clear view all around you. This big kind of flat windscreen. We do sit quite forward here, which is nice for, scoping out them trails and making sure your path is clear. Turning circle as we try and do a U-turn here. It's definitely a lot to be desired. Yeah, definitely going to take quite a bit to turn this girl around. But yeah, seats are quite comfortable. It's fairly easy to drive if you've driven an old truck before. You do kind of got to really snap her into gear here, but she gets the job done. And it's easy enough to get off the line and, find first and that. We do have a backup camera in this as well, thankfully, because this is a long vehicle, and trying to see what you're doing when you're backing up could be an issue if you did not have that camera. And when I look at one of these things, it's unlike anything else you see on the road. It really comes to mind something like, the Army, something that's in NATO, go anywhere off-road, have 9 soldiers in the back or something. And to me, that really is what this thing looks like it would suit. Now, in terms of, your handling and steering and all that in this vehicle, it is a truck, and it drives like a truck. Nothing at all in this vehicle is precision or, tight feeling. But at the end of the day, this thing is nearly almost 30 years old, and it all works. Nothing is broken in here, and it's just impressive to see this thing in action. It really is. Now, price of one of these things, well, it really does depend what you're doing, how much of a checkbook you have, what you want out of it. But I am told that these things are basically starting around that, $200,000 mark, and it ain't cheap to get into an OKA. I'll tell you what, they're custom, hand-built machines that really, yeah, you gotta have quite a bit of cash to get into one of these things. And as in terms of a used sale market value, I have no idea, because it would be very rare to see these vehicles come up on the market. And when they do, you're probably gonna just have people ask whatever they want. Now, just having to walk around on this OKA and just have a look at this beast. You stand next to this thing and it is a monster. I'll tell you guys what, there really ain't much else like it here. And, look, to get into this thing, it is that high. You've actually got these little designed steps here so you don't slip to get into this beast. And, this is at my head height. It's huge. And, you just look down the side here, you've got your tanks down the side here, your split cab down the back here, and then you do have your tray, spare tire under there, hitch, and just the way you can alter these things to basically any specification you want, it's just insane. You can have this thing as a full bus, you can have this thing as a full ute, make it a camper. It all depends on how much you want to write down in a checkbook and what you want from OKA. They'll basically do anything you want. And, just vehicles like this, they're just very, very cool to see up in person. You've got this step that does come down, hooked up to air here. So as soon as you open that door, that will drop down. And in here, it is, to specifications to whatever you want. And we've got 9 seats in this particular OKA, and it's just ridiculous, man. Flat floor in here, so you do have tons of space. You can see you've got your aircon vents up there, so everyone does stay nice and cool. And, headroom, we've got absolutely tons in here. Even your feet room, there is just so much space in this particular vehicle, and you can see everything even from the back here, which is very cool. And the fact that you can take these seats out, configure this thing in basically any way you want to, it's bloody awesome. Now, excuse the dog hair, because he does have a friendly passenger that hangs back here all the time, and is a very lucky occupant to be riding around in this thing. So let's have a look up the front, and just getting in to the driver's seat here. Again, we got to use that hub in the wheel there. Use your grab handles and jump, basically, because, yeah, as you can see by Hank very below us, and he is a tall man. In here, it's very cool. You've got this OKA steering wheel in there. This thing is like nearly 30 years old, so, everything in here is very much retro. And, let's just fire it up here for a minute. Bit of juice, and she goes. This is a 5-speed manual. Very cool to see. That's just pop her in neutral. Here you got your high-low range that you can do. And, you've got your air brake here. All of your vast gauges. So, all of your fuel, your volts, temperature, whatever you need to do. Your basic tachometers down there. And it's all pretty simple. You've got an aftermarket stereo put in right there. We've even got our airbag control, so if we load the back up with a ton of gear, we can actually just lift that up, raises the rear, and balances this vehicle out again. So stuff like that is really good. So you've got your rear diff lock there as well. We do have 2 fuel tanks on this particular one, so 100 liters each, so we can have a 200 liter capacity, which we can alternate between the two. And this thing on a full tank, you can get on the freeway over 1,000 Ks out of it. And that is pretty damn impressive. And when you're out in the bush just crawling around, the owner tells me this thing will last for basically forever. So it is actually pretty reasonable on fuel here. Now, you do have your AC, very standard controls. Again, this thing's nearly 30 years old. And under this, that is where you're going to get access to your engine. Now, if you actually do want to do some work to this thing, it is pretty friendly for you to do it yourself. You will just take these seats out pretty simply and then just lift this up. The side panels will come out as well, and then you've got full access to the motor. And yeah, the owner said it is very easy to work on himself. So enough about what's in here, guys. You know, let's get back out on the road and see if this thing can actually do a 0 to 100. 3, 2, 1, go. And second. And third. Come on. And fourth. Come on. And foot is flat to the floor, guys. 90. And 100. I am not even going to attempt to try and put it into fifth because it is a struggle. You know, this is a 30-year-old gearbox, and you know, you really got to be kind of delicate with it and make sure you're in gear. Yeah, it's a workout, that is for sure, and you definitely need a long runway to get to 100. But she will do it. This was actually on the dyno and topped out at 147 kilometers per hour. So for a vehicle of this size, that is bloody impressive, I'd say. Now, 0 to 100, guys, there, as you could imagine, 33.6 seconds. And I'm going to have to check because this might be the slowest 0 to 100 we've ever done. I do know for a fact the little key truck that we did do, that was something like 30-something seconds as well. So it is quite funny. The smallest truck I've ever reviewed and the biggest truck I've ever reviewed both put down quite a similar 0 to 100, which is pretty comical. But as you can imagine, guys, this thing is totally just for off-road. 0 to 100, totally irrelevant. The real biggest shame about the OKA, I think, is the fact that it did kind of go a little bit unsuccessful because you don't really see these in terms of, you know, high production like the original founders had anticipated for the mining sector, because I guess these were just a little bit too expensive for the mining companies maybe to justify. I've been in the mining industry for quite a few years now, and I've never seen an OKA until today. And that is a little bit unfortunate. So there it is, guys, the OKA. You know, these things are just, again, 30 years old, majority of these things. You know, they have just started making them again here in 2020. And just the epitome of big off-road behemoths here in Australia. And such a cool vehicle. So glad I could have shared it with you guys today. I hope you did enjoy this review. If so, make sure you guys hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you're new here. We'll see you on that next video.